To all Reddit travelers, what is your creepiest hotel story? Story 1. While in the Isles of Scotland, we stayed in a B&B. It was owned by a couple. The bedrooms were extremely well done and beautiful, but on everything there were signs to not touch. To use a shower, you would have to ask the couple, and the internet ended at 11 p.m. The woman would also check on everyone at random times in the night. We would hear creeping in the hallway to make sure everyone was sleeping and not doing any illegal things like using the internet. When we checked out of her B&B, she came into our room and said that we stunk and opened the window to prove this and demanded money immediately. Another traveler was kicked out of the B&B because the checkout time was 10 a.m. and they were forced to stand outside. She wouldn't even let them stay inside in the thunderstorm while their taxi came. Another traveler had to write a check. We were in an isolated place to pay for the room, and she took their bags and wouldn't give them back. But on the way out, she asked everyone if they enjoyed their stay. So I took a look at their TripAdvisor page, and the owner seems to have changed to a much nicer couple since we visited in 2015. However, all of the negative reviews are from before the change. The location was Isle of Skye in Portree. Story 2. When I was 12, my family took a vacation to Europe. At our hotel in Rome, there was this amazing indoor pool, and being a child of my age, I would have spent the entire vacation there if I could. During one such swimming excursion, some random gentleman, I think probably around 40 or something, comes over to me and starts tickling my feet. My mother was with me but is preoccupied with one of my other siblings. He speaks English as well and starts teasing me for being ticklish and telling me how I'm simply adorable. Through my giggles, I keep shyly asking him to stop. He doesn't and just keeps teasing me and touching my feet and lower legs. This went on for maybe like 2 minutes tops before my mom sees what's finally happening and goes into super protective mode and tells him to back the heck off. Story 3. While attending college, I went on a road trip with a good friend of mine to watch the sports team in the Big being played in Florida. We were hurtling down the Florida Turnpike at 80 miles per hour around 2 in the morning. I had a CB radio in my truck at the time, tuned into Channel 19, when out of the darkness, a voice from the radio said, in the creepiest way possible, "I didn't know you Tennessee boys could read a map." We responded with some nervous laughter. Turns out it was a trucker that saw us pass him as my buddy was looking at our map, trying to find a place for us to pull over and rest for a bit, and noticed our Tennessee license plate. He was super helpful and told us that there wasn't much around where we were, but there was a motel we could try up the road. We thanked him and headed that way. Getting off the exit and following his directions brought us to a motel that, I kid you not, looked exactly like the one from the movie Psycho. We went into the office, but there were no lights on and it appeared to be empty. A quick walk down the handful of rooms yielded no more lights, people, other cars, or any signs of life in general. We went back into the office just to see if we had missed a sign or something, and I said, very loudly, "Hello?" At that moment, a young guy that had been asleep on a cot behind the front desk got up and asked us what we needed. We said we wanted a room. He responded, "Pick whichever one you want. They're all unlocked." We ended up picking one. All had 2 queen beds. They appeared reasonably clean as far as motels go, but it was creepily outdated. The bathrooms were completely covered in old tile that was brownish green and for some reason reminded me of an old high school gym locker room. We took turns showering and tried to get a bit of rest, which ended up in us laying down on top of the comforters on the beds, since that seemed like the most hygienic thing we could do. We napped off and on for about an hour. Realizing that we weren't going to get any rest, we went back to talk to the guy in the office. After waking him up and telling him that after our showers we would rather just head out, we asked him how much we owed him. "Don't know," he responded. "How about $10? So we paid the man and left. Weirdest and possibly cheapest lodging I think I've ever experienced. It's like you were in a horror movie that just never actually started. Story 4. My wife and I stayed in a pretty well-known hotel in London. The rooms were nice but had a door that allowed someone to travel between our room and the one next to us. To do so, you needed to open the door in my room and then someone had to open theirs in the neighboring room. There was only one handle on each door. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night and thought I saw someone moving around. It was dark and in the middle of the night, so I thought it was my wife. The next morning, I found my separator door ajar. Story 5. When I was 12, I was staying in a motel with my mom on a road trip. We were in the middle of nowhere in Texas at a motel that had a decent rating in our guidebook and was really cheap, so we went for it. In the middle of the night, the owner knocked on the door and told us we had to leave because he wanted the room for someone else. My mom was outside arguing with him while I was gathering our things, and I was terrified because I heard him start yelling too. I looked out the window and saw about half a dozen bikers in vests appear out of nowhere, maybe a nearby room, and start confronting the owner. My mom came inside quickly and we watched them start harassing the guy, saying things like, "She's paid to be here. You're going to let her stay the night. We don't want to ever hear anything like this from you again." And the owner was saying things like, I don't want any trouble." Everybody left fairly quickly, and we didn't ever hear anything about it again the next day at checkout. We weren't able to sleep very well because we were so shaken up, but it was better than getting in the car again. Thank you, Anonymous Biker Gang. Story 6. I once stayed in a B&B that had a shared bathroom. The first night I got up at probably 2 a.m. and was bursting for a pee. The bathroom was down the hallway, not too far, but seemed like such an effort in my tired state. So I get to the bathroom and open the door, and there was this guy just standing in the bathroom, dressed head to toe in a mime costume, face painted and everything. He was squatted down on the floor, but his trousers were still up. I looked at him for a second. He gave me a wave with a smile and began just silently pushing. I just ran back to my room, locked the door, and decided to pee in a bottle. I'm still not sure if I was just really tired and seeing things or something. It's seriously the strangest thing I've ever seen. Story 7. I arrive at a secluded coastal hotel south of Marmari, Turkey around 2 a.m. It had been a long day in Istanbul, followed by a flight and long bus ride into Marmari, where I haggled with non-English speaking taxi drivers who are not even aware that this small resort exists. So when the taxi pulls up to the hotel, it's on fire. When the owner, standing out front, sees us, he opens the taxi door excitedly. You come, I have nice room for you." I point out that the hotel is on fire, but he simply gestures and says, "Small fire, no problem, you come." And I am just utterly exhausted. I find myself following the owner into the hotel, stepping over fire hoses, waving away smoke, and passing firefighters as they run up and down a very nice staircase. We pause at the second floor landing, and the owner tells me, "See, fire only on this side of hotel. This side, no fire, you come." My exhaustion removes every ounce of common sense, and I follow him to a room down the hall. The room is indeed fire-free. I quickly scan the "in case of fire" message on the back of the door, check the window escape, and promptly pass out with my gear and boots on. In the morning, I awake, alive, wondering if I had dreamt the entire thing. I go down the smoky stairs, past the charred other side of the hotel. The owner's so happy to see me, still alive, that he eats breakfast with me. I went back a few years later, and the hotel had fully recovered. Story 8. My mom was traveling for work and sat next to a man, a fellow business traveler, on the plane. They had a casual conversation and exchanged business cards. Later that evening, she's in her hotel watching TV and gets a phone call from the front desk that her husband is there, and they want to know if they can give him a key to the room. Turns out the creep on the plane was pretending to be her husband to try to get into her room. Jeez, good thing they confirmed with her first. That's super creepy. Story 9. We were in Spain and left the town because Dad had to do some work at a library in a neighboring town. We came back late and the hotel had moved all of our stuff, down to the toothbrushes, from one room to a more expensive room, claiming that someone else had a reservation. We didn't believe them and started packing. When they realized we were serious, they let us stay in the more expensive room at a lower rate. We've had weirdo neighbors all over the place. Some Muslim guy was always arguing with his wife in the middle of the night after prayer time. This guy would go out in the hallway and work with his hammer on a bench, bang, 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 in the middle of the night. Dad once went out in his underwear and asked him, "Need a hand?" The guy was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were asleep." Well, I couldn't sleep because some guy is doing carpentry in the middle of the night. Story 10. Found a hotel in Yangon, Burma, for the day we got there for pretty cheap. They mentioned the rates were low because maintenance was being done on several floors. We sleep fine, wake up, and head to breakfast. At breakfast, we met some Germans who had also stayed the night in our hotel. They said they had not slept well because during the middle of the night, someone woke them up to move them from the floor they were on. We, us, and the Germans found out later that they had been moved because they were on one of the levels reserved for maintenance, and part of the maintenance included gassing the room for bugs. During the middle of the night, they were just going around the room, shoving the gas nozzle or whatever under the doors and letting them run, wound up taking the lives of 2 people next to the Germans before they realized they'd accidentally booked people on that floor. We weren't on that floor, thankfully, but has always stuck with me how seemingly easy it could have been to have gotten mixed up in all of that. Story 11. In 1996, while air drying naked after a shower lying on my hotel bed in Beijing with the curtains drawn, I received a call demanding I put on clothes. Story 12. I arrived late at a hotel for a business trip. The flight had a malfunction, so we had to land. They fixed it on the tarmac and we never deplaned. The room was already paid for, confirmation number in hand, etc. So I got there about 5 hours after I was supposed to be there. Of course, they gave away my room. I already wasn't happy from all the delays and I wasn't going anywhere. The event I was there for was in their hotel. I wanted my room. I was polite but resolutely firm. They did some scrambling and asked if I would consider a damaged room under construction. As long as the sheets are clean so I can go to bed, I don't care, was my reply. Mistake. The room they gave me was literally a crime scene. The case had been closed, so there was no legal issue to contend with, but someone had a violent incident that had happened in that room. They had primed over the stains on the walls and ceiling, but had only taped down semi-clear plastic over the carpets. Multiple small holes in the walls had obviously been patched and sanded, but there were multiple small holes in the walls. They gave me a completely new bed and TV from an on-site inventory, so I was comfortable, but man, it was creepy as heck. The creepiest part was the priming job. It was obviously stain splattered. You could see where the person had been hit and where they fell. Story 13. Was in Mexico. My GF and I stayed a night in a hut in the jungle. No running water, no electricity. As we are from Central Europe, we are not used to dangerous wildlife, spiders and scorpions, etc. There was a beautiful cenote nearby, and at some point it rained like crazy. The daytime was amazing. The night, not so much. In our hut was a bed with a mosquito net with huge holes in it. It was pitch black in the hut as we laid down and got comfortable trying to sleep. I felt a bit creeped out and decided to check the hut for insects with my phone's flashlight. Bad idea. There were hundreds of big spiders all over the walls and ceiling. I slept like a mummy, wrapping every piece of clothing we had on us. But the spiders are protecting you from the mosquitoes. Story 14. A friend and I once stayed at a pretty fancy B&B for the night. The lady who owned it was absolutely lovely, but would appear out of nowhere. So like we'd be sitting alone in a large room with one doorway and suddenly she was in the room with us. Either this lady had secret doors or something really creepy was going on. She seemed to know things that we'd said or done as well. The thing that tripped us out the most was hearing someone trying to open our door during the night. She was super lovely and the building was beautiful, but we were relieved to check out the next morning. She was a ghost. Story 15. Did the couchsurfing.com thing with a friend a few years ago. We are both big guys, so typically we feel safe everywhere we go. So we show up at the house, 60-year-old guy opens the door while on the phone. He's only wearing sweatpants. He signals for us to enter. He continues his conversation and ends with an "I love you." He turns to us and says welcome and apologizes for being on the phone. He starts talking about his GF, who he was talking with and how she lives overseas. He mentions he has several girlfriends and boasts about being a ladies' man. He then starts to show us pictures. Now, these girls look like they were 14. While sliding through the pic, he accidentally showed us one of their passports. Now, this weirded us out a lot. We were in our early 20s and didn't really know what to do, so we said we were tired and wanted to sleep. He walked us to the room while rubbing his belly, told us he'll make us breakfast in the morning. We decided to sleep the night off, but left before he woke up. My friend slept on the bedroom door, so he couldn't sneak in. We got up super early and bolted. We got super weird vibes from the guy and just felt gross and weird about the whole thing. Story 16. I was traveling out of the country right after finishing up a huge 5-day work event where I had about 10 hours sleep total during the 5 days. I got to the motel, which is kind of run down and the carpet and blankets are damp, but I'm so exhausted, I don't even really think about it. I fall asleep pretty much immediately at 8 p.m. local time. At maybe around 11 p.m. or so, I get a call from the motel phone saying there's been a complaint about noise. I tell them that's impossible. I've been sleeping. They ask maybe if it's someone else in the room and I tell them, nope, I'm here alone, so there's definitely no one else making noise. They ask me again if I'm sure I'm by myself and not causing any noise. I say yes, again, fall back asleep almost immediately. When I woke up and thought about it some more, I realized how weird the interaction was. There was absolutely no noise I could hear anywhere nearby, and I don't know why the motel staff would need to clarify so many times that I was alone. Apparently, they never called, so I assume it must have been someone calling different rooms to see who was in the rooms and how many people. I've never been so glad to always use the extra latch chain lock. Story 17. Family vacation, 1 a.m. My brother and I just finished watching The Shining on TV. Neither of us had even seen it before. We heard someone trying to open our door. No one else was supposed to have keys. Someone tried to swing open the door, but the hotel lock stopped them. They kept trying to open it multiple times, banging the door against the lock. After a few tries, they gave up. The hotel desk clerk accidentally entered the wrong room for their key cards. It was probably the best way I saw The Shining. I can't be scared more than that from that movie. Story 18. I was staying in Birmingham, Alabama at a Hyatt. Nothing crazy, nothing obviously creepy. But one night around 2 a.m., I woke up to a man screaming, like a really loud scream. I sat there in a panic, wondering if I should call someone, but when I didn't hear anything else, I chalked it up to a dream. The next night, I woke up around 3 a.m. and had this horrible feeling that someone was in my room. I rolled over and there was an old man sitting on the AC. He was boxed in, smoking, looking away from me. I stared at him for a few seconds and he turned to look at me. So I shot up out of bed, ready to run, and no one was there. I don't lucid dream. While I do have vivid dreams, they are not that vivid. I can describe that man to a T, and yet he was never there. For the people who are saying sleep paralysis, I travel for a living staying in hotels for 240 some odd days of the year. So hotels are not weird for me. I was able to roll over, pull the covers closer to me, roll over to turn on the light, and sit up. I have never experienced this before, and the closest being when someone literally came into my room at 3 a.m., which the hotel verified and apologized for, and I was more unsure of that being real than this. Now, granted, who knows? Story 19. A chalet in the state of Maine, Vermont with 3 others. The lady at the front desk was approximately a billion years old with cloudy eyes, and her front desk was a small table next to a recliner in a room full of knickknacks and china dolls. The actual room was what I imagine a hotel room in the 40s would look like, and obviously it had never been remodeled. The bathroom had a metal claw foot tub. The worst part, though, was the door at the back of the room. I assumed it would be another closet, but we opened it and there was nothing but cold and darkness. We used a flashlight on our phones and discovered a long, wide, cement-walled hallway. I assumed it was used to travel between rooms when the weather was bad, but the vibe it gave off was making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The night went smoothly enough and nothing ever happened, but I still feel like we survived a night in a boring horror movie. I've tried to look for it again, but with no results. I'll have to ask my grandma who booked the trip. Here's a review on the place. Room was okay. Bathroom was clean and modern, but a couple of things bothered us. One, there were flies in the room. Not many, but we did have to swat several before we could go to sleep. Each room has a back door to an unlit hallway. When we arrived in the room, that door was unlocked and wide open. We closed and locked it, of course. In our second room, the back door was closed but unlocked, so we locked it. When we came back later that evening, the door was again unlocked. Needless to say, we were spooked. We hadn't left anything in the rooms during the evening, so nothing was taken or disturbed, but still, not going back. Story 20. Once witnessed a thief breaking into cars in the parking lot from my hotel room window. Called the front desk and they had security go outside with a big stick. We had the bird's eye view as this security officer was searching for the thief and the thief was evading him. Unfortunately, the thief got away in his vehicle.